Welcome to Healing the Tigress, a podcast of conversations and stories on Asian American Pacific Islander maternal mental health. We are your hosts. I'm Peggy, a perinatal mental health therapist.
And I'm Jasmine, a clinical pharmacist who is perinatal mental health certified. Both of us are Taiwanese American mothers who have lived experiences of postpartum depression and anxiety. It felt like we didn't see anyone who looked like us also struggling with their mental health in new motherhood. But we would go on to learn that it wasn't just us and that there was so much more to perinatal mental health.
So we created this podcast because we know that sharing these stories can begin to break the stigma of mental health in our community, and we want to help heal the inner tigress in all AAPI parents. Let's get started. Happy New Year, Healing the Tigress fans. We wanted to kick off the new year and continuation of Season 3 with a special episode from February 2025 that we actually recorded as guests for the Yellow Chair Collective's Eldest Daughter Talk podcast series. If you're new to our podcast, this will also give you some more background on Healing the Tigress and our perinatal mental health journeys. Yellow Chair Collective is a psychotherapist group based out of California and New York, specializing in serving the AAPI community. To learn more about Yellow Chair Collective, you can find them on Instagram at Yellow Chair Collective or their website, yellowchaircollective.com. Thank you to hosts Soo Jin and Linda for interviewing us.
My name is Jasmine, and I am a clinical pharmacist. I am a mom of one, and I'm a writer and also part of the duo podcast, Healing the Tigress. I'm one of our co-hosts, and Peggy is my counterpart.
I'm Peggy. I am an LCSW by background, and I'm currently a perinatal mental health therapist, practicing specifically with pregnant, postpartum moms, but I also open up my practice to just anyone really going through similar types of role transitions. I am the second half of the Healing the Tigress co-host team, and I am also a mom of one.
I guess we should also say we're both Taiwanese American.
Yep.
So that's our
right.
cultural
Yeah.
background.
Yeah. Second generation Taiwanese American.
You identify second generation as your parents were first gen immigrants, like they moved to United States and you were born in the United States.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct. Came from Taiwan first, and then we were born here.
And then because our podcast does address family dynamics and sibling dynamic roles, we're interested in hearing about your sibling placement in the family and how that has impacted both of your family dynamics, perhaps, or your insights about them.
Yeah, sure. I guess I could start. I am the oldest. I have a younger sister, and she and I are about almost 5 years apart. So it's a little bit of a wider age gap. My mom actually wasn't really sure if she wanted to have a second child after she had me. It was like a really difficult childbirth that she always complains to me about. And so it was very like, oh, do I really want to do that again? So I think that's part of the reason for a slightly larger age gap, because they, for the longest time, maybe were thinking they actually didn't want another one. And it wasn't until maybe I was a little older, maybe things were getting a little easier. And she tells me that people said, because she was telling people that I was pretty attached to her, like very clingy to her and stuff, that people suggested, oh, have another one. And then she'll stop doing it. I think as a working mom too, our working parents, they just felt bad that they couldn't always give me that time. So yeah, they had a second, and that's kind of history.
And I am actually the second born, or the youngest. I have an older sister who is like 4.5 years older than I am. My mom is the youngest of 7. And I'm also the youngest daughter of the youngest son.
Oh.
However, I feel like in a lot of ways, my relationship with my family and my parents, I felt like I had to step into some of the more stereotypical eldest daughter roles, even though I am the youngest. And interestingly enough, my dad, even though he's the youngest, he took care of my grandparents and continues to be the sole child that is really responsible for my grandmother's care in a lot of ways. So some interesting, different, breaking kind of the stereotype in some sense. I may not be the eldest daughter, but I definitely see some similar themes and relate to some similar themes.
Yeah.
Love the dynamic you two are displaying. How did you two get started on the idea of the podcast? I know, Jasmine, you had mentioned a little bit about your personal background and journey. How did you two end up working together, and why a podcast?
I think it might have started more so that I started sharing parts of my story. I gave birth maybe not a year before Peggy, probably 8-9 months before Peggy did. So we had overlapping like pregnancies / like when I was in postpartum, she was still pregnant. And then she saw the progression of my journey in postpartum. I started opening up about my postpartum probably around the time you actually gave birth, Peggy. And I have a small platform. I used to have a travel blog, and that's where I started writing about my postpartum experiences and started finding more friends and acquaintances would actually resonate and tell me like, wow, like I went through something similar. And so I think it just encouraged me to share more because it seemed like I wasn't the only one that had gone through this, although it certainly felt like it. The more I started writing and sharing, Peggy would talk to me about some of the stuff I wrote about, and we would just nerd out over some of the feelings. And she's a therapist, right? So a lot of the things I write about are very raw. And so she would just like hone in on things. And I felt like I could really connect with her over these topics, especially in postpartum and motherhood. And she was a new mom too. And we had met up like right before the pandemic broke out. And she tells me it was like her first time going out alone with the baby and driving alone. That was the beginning of our reconnection. Like we went to high school together and did journalism together. But in motherhood, I felt like we found a new connection. And it wasn't until, what was it, like 2 years ago, Peggy, that
Yeah, it was like
beginning of
in
2023.
the spring of 2023.
Yeah, I think it was beginning of 2023 that Peggy messaged me and was just like, it was like a new year beginning. And I think we start to think about, what am I doing this year? Like, what goals and things do I have for this year? And Peggy was like, came to me with the idea, was like, hey, I want to start a podcast. What do you think about that on mental health? And then I'll let Peggy say what happened after that.
Because at the time, I wasn't actually working as a therapist. I had held up my LCSW. I was in a health tech company where I wasn't even really using my LCSW anymore. But hey, you work for it, you keep renewing it, everything, because I knew that I would want to be able to use it and keep my clinical edge up. And I had one of these moments where I was like, what am I doing at this job? And I wasn't going to quit, but I was like, I need to fulfill this part of me that loves talking about mental health. And Jasmine's story really was an inspiration. I think being able to see how she could create this platform and create a place where people could connect with her on her postpartum depression journey was really inspiring. And originally I just said maybe like a maternal mental health podcast, but Jasmine was the one who was like, but what if we made it more specific to the AAPI community, to the Asian American Pacific Islander community? Because for her and her experience, it was so hard to find people that looked like her when she was in the thick of it. And I hadn't even realized that there was that need for that until we started Googling, are there AAPI maternal mental health podcasts? And we couldn't find any. And we found maybe like an episode here and there in someone else's podcast or like a blip in an article somewhere. So it's one of those things where it's, if you don't have it, build it. If it doesn't exist, make it.
Yeah. And I don't think I would have been able to bring it to fruition without Peggy's help and the passion and idea that she had driving it, because I had toyed with the idea, but actually doing it and like coming up with the background and figuring out the research on how to start a podcast, I think it was daunting to me. And Peggy was like, don't worry, I can figure that out. She's like, I just need to do this with someone. I need your help and maybe just your expertise behind, because I had worked with a lot of people in the field already. I had volunteered with Postpartum Support International and I had some contacts. And so I think just she was the driving force, and I brought the contacts and some of the background experience of the work I had already done. And together we were able to make this thing together and come to life, which has been so rewarding and exciting. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm also wondering, since the podcast is about Eldest Daughter experience, through this scenario, struggles you're going through, do you think you'd be Taiwanese American, Asian American, having this role, responsibility you have grown up and being a parent, how do you think that might have also intersected that too?
I definitely think it goes back to what Peggy was saying, those characteristics of being type A and perfectionistic. Being the eldest, of course, for me, the other thing too is I'm the first one going through this. It doesn't always have to be that way, right? But my sister and I have a larger age gap, and I was the first one. I got married before her. I got pregnant before her. I had a child before her. I had no one before me to really lean on for experience going into it and advice and tips and things. I had friends, but even then, I don't think I had a lot of nearby friends at that time who had just gone through it or were in like a similar timeline at that time. And so I think going into it too, a lot of it was, I was very optimistic of the postpartum period, thinking that, oh, I have a supportive husband. I have a very supportive family. My parents said they're going to come by every day and drop off confinement type foods, and I should be fine. I dropped a ball on a lot of things, like, in hindsight. But then I think going into it too, just thinking, oh, it's just going to come naturally to me. I'm just going to figure out how to breastfeed easily. It'll just happen. My motherly instincts are going to kick in. And then when it didn't, I think I was a lot harder on myself maybe than maybe a non-type A perfectionistic person might be. And all my life, it just feels like I've been very conditioned to think if I put in the work, I'm going to be able to achieve an outcome, right? If I study really hard, can ace the exam. And if I put in the right research and work behind this, then I'm going to achieve my goals. But motherhood is wild cards come at you at all directions, and you just don't know what you're going to get. It's a grab bag of things. You can't control a lot of that. So I think part of it is the control factor. If you're a kind of person that really thrives on organization, structure, and having control of your environment, it can be hard in that postpartum time. And if you're not expecting it to be chaotic or not expecting to not be able to control the chaos, that's the other thing is I think I kept internally thinking like, why is this so hard for me? Like I'm usually so able to handle it. And Peggy says this in one of our episodes where she interviewed me for my story, was just like, you pivot, but at a certain point, you keep pivoting so much you can't pivot anymore. And that's when everything just falls apart. So that was my experience, at least.
Yeah. And one of the things we learn in our PMHC training, which is the perinatal mental health certification, are the risk factors for perinatal mental health disorders. And I remember being a little bit both shocked and not surprised that perfectionism, type A personality, was a risk factor. Because you think risk factors are like lack of support. But when I saw perfectionism and type A personality type, I was like, oh, shoot, this makes sense now. Because even though I'm not an eldest daughter, I definitely have that personality type. And I think, like Jasmine said, it gets you far in life. It gets you to be more high achieving and all those sorts of things. But again, motherhood isn't something to achieve. And I've heard other friends who are eldest daughters, Asian American, first-time moms who said, I have been able to ace everything in my life this far, and I can't ace this one. I have not figured out how to ace this one. Very specifically, like that kind of language of this is something I have to achieve and accomplish and ace, and I'm not able to do it. Why?
Diving a little bit deeper into this intersection identities that we all hold, I wonder if that plays a role in your experiences working with clients and patients.
I don't specifically work in mental health as a practicing pharmacist, but like Peggy, I've had training. I have a PMHC as well. And just from my personal experience, I can definitely vouch for the fact that I think a lot of Asian Americans growing up, your parents have worked so hard. And you think that I should technically have it easy because they've sacrificed everything and they've worked so hard. And now I get to reap the benefits, right? I'm so privileged. I should be able to do this, right? What is motherhood compared to all the stuff that they've gone through? And there's this other Chinese concept of 吃苦, where you are supposed to swallow the bitterness. It's another way of saying suck it up, right? People have survived harder things than you have gone through. And so when you're going through a hard time, when I was going through a hard time, a lot of it for me was just like, I felt like I was just supposed to take it and I was supposed to be able to survive it because my parents have been through so much worse. right? So why wasn't I able to do this? Asking for help felt like a sign of admission of failure. And I also think I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know what help I needed. Even if I could have asked for help, I don't think I knew what that help looked like. And even working in healthcare, and I've done psych rotations, I've done inpatient rotations, outpatient psych rotations. Even seeing it from a provider side, it's so different when you're the actual patient. I don't think I truly understood until I was in those shoes. And thinking about even therapy, like my OB told me at the 6-week visit, she's, I think you need to start antidepressants, and I think you need to go see therapy. And I was like, therapy? How am I going to talk my way out of this? How are they going to solve my problems that I can't breastfeed? How is a therapist going to help me sleep at night because I have terrible insomnia right now and I can't get any rest? Like, to me, those weren't solutions. Maybe because they weren't modeled for me. But also, again, I just didn't realize the kind of help I should be asking for and what that looked like.
Especially if you're the parentified eldest daughter, everyone is going to you for help. You are supposed to help with your younger siblings. You're supposed to help do these things. And so you grow up with this internalized understanding of, I am the one that people go to for help. I don't ask for help because everyone is relying on me to be the help. So when the eldest daughter needs help, who helps the eldest daughter?
Yeah.
How did you end up asking for help, and who ended up helping you?
It took a lot of therapy. Like, I had seen therapists even prior to being pregnant or post. And I tried to take this kind of preventive approach of, I'm going to try to find a therapist sooner while I still can. So for me, it was recognizing that when I ask for help, that help is there. It's just not going to be who I wished it would have been. It would have been nice to be able to turn to your parents for help. But I think in a lot of AAPI families, there isn't that safety to talk about your feelings with them. And I think also because I worked in mental health, I normalized that at a younger age in terms of going to college for psychology and stuff like that. So my asking for help was actually in response to the fact that I didn't get it growing up. I went into psychology because I was like, I need to understand what is going on with my family because I don't know why they are the way they are, why I am the way I am. So that was my journey, but also seeing other people in my life and their experiences in postpartum and being like, I don't want to be in that. I know what it looks like to really struggle emotionally and mentally. And this is a big change in my life. I still had postpartum anxiety because it doesn't mean that it was going to erase it necessarily, but at least I did have a therapist during that time, but it was still really hard.
I think for me, if I really think about it, I didn't ask for help. Help was asked for me because I was struggling so hard. It was to the point that my husband had to step in and say, look, I think you actually need to take the medication your doctor is recommending. And for him to say, look, I think we need to go see a psychiatrist because this isn't improving. And for me to admit that something was wrong, I think it took him speaking up for me to really recognize that I couldn't self-solve this. I couldn't keep course correcting because whatever I was doing wasn't enough. I needed more support. So I think him taking that step, connecting with the right team of the psychiatrist who really understood why the insomnia was driving me nuts and it was making the depression a lot worse. And she was the first one to say, look, I'm going to help you get to sleep. And hearing that was such a breath of fresh air because somebody finally understood why I was feeling so bad and feeling so hopeless that I just couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And for her to say that it was helpful. Eventually finding the right therapist too. And all of these things that when you grow up, your parents are like, oh, you don't need medication. Oh, therapy, you don't need therapy. To go against that too took a lot of looking inwards to say, maybe this is what I grew up learning, but maybe it wasn't all right.
They're always a problem solver. And to not have the solution or not able to solve that problem, right, is very devastating and very shattering, like identity and all the foundation. So thank you for the work that you're doing. It's very encouraging and very inspiring to hear there's a there's a podcast and platform and people like you that people can go and find the resource from. Jasmine and Peggy, I'm wondering, as daughters who had experienced this oldest daughter traits, what do you do as parents to make different choices so your child do not inherit that oldest daughter narratives that you had for yourselves?
So I think my approach to parenting has definitely been conscious parenting or gentle parenting, but I think it's more just reminding my child that adults have feelings, children have feelings, and all of it is okay. And we can validate each other. There are boundaries. Yes, there are things that I'm not going to allow because it's for safety purposes or whatnot. And I think just establishing less of an authoritarian role, but more of I'm here to guide you kind of way. And I want to be a safe person that you can come to. And so I think a lot of it comes down to really validating their feelings and experiences in ways that we didn't get validated as children. I'm a lot more about the repair now that I felt like I never got, because it's healing to me as well. I feel like a part of me is healing when I'm repairing with my child and letting her know that I am human. I have emotions, and sometimes I do get frustrated and angry, but that we can come back and we can talk about it. And I'm not perfect. I definitely mess up a lot. But I think the saving grace is knowing that I can always go back and reflect on it with my daughter. And I think those are great teaching moments that she feels like she is able to talk to me about anything. Peggy and I have talked a lot about how our kids, they're very affectionate. They tell us they love us like all the time. Those are things that maybe we never got as kids. And I think it's showing up based on like how we're parenting.
Jasmine hit it on the nail, but I do think the key is communication. And that was so missing in a lot of children of immigrants, eldest daughters of immigrants, is that open communication. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a perfect mom. You have to be a good enough mom. But in those moments, the rupture and repair. And Jasmine said, how are we just being honest about the fact that we're human? And I think that models it for our children as well, is hey, we mess up and that's okay. And this is what that looks like. Because we may not have had those models growing up, but now we get to model that for our kids. We get to show them what it looks like to talk about things. Just the fact that my child will be able to tell me, I'm nervous, maybe before swim class. Like, I don't think I ever was able to verbalize that to my parents. Because one, I don't know if they would, I think, be like, whatever, don't be nervous, suck it up or something. But having him tell me, like, I'm nervous. And I'm like, oh, okay. Or we've been able to even bring it down to a somatic level of my tummy hurts. And is it a you have to poo tummy hurt? Or is it you are feeling nervous? And he's able to identify, I think it's a nervous tummy ache. So now he's being taught how to feel physically where his feelings are.
But I also feel that if you don't understand where your anger and frustration are stemming from, sometimes it can be really hard to break out of that. I hear plenty of people tell me that, but they just make me so mad. And it's why? Like, where is that hitting that nerve for you? And I think once you can recognize that origin, it can be really powerful to release that, because when the moment comes up again, you're like, ooh, not really my kid's fault. And I tell this to my child sometimes too. You didn't make me feel mad. Only I can control that. And because I can see it already. And this is something I used to do, is I would internalize those feelings, be like, oh, I'm so awful. I also don't want her to take on that responsibility of owning my feelings. So I often have to tell her, like, look, I know you don't feel good about this, and I'm not blaming you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Definitely taking all those in. So how can our audience find more about you and your work?
So our podcast is called Healing the Tigress, and we are basically on any platform that streams podcasts. So you can find us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you can stream podcasts. We're also on Instagram at Healing the Tigress. And then for myself, my private practice, you can find me on Psychology Today. I also have an Instagram that I don't use very much, but it's Healing with Peggy. And that's usually where you can contact me as well. And then Jasmine has her own.
Yeah, so you can find my page at Pearls of Jasmine. I'm mostly active on Instagram, but Pearls of Jasmine is also the name of my blog. I also have a newsletter on Substack, which I'm more active in writing there about some of my parenting things. I'm more active there than on my blog right now.
Amazing. So we'll make sure that all of these have been posted when we are posting this episode, so you can find all the details of where you can find Jasmine and Peggy and listen to their podcast as well.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us in this amazing conversation today.
We want to thank you deeply for tuning into this episode of Healing the Tigress. The more we share these stories, the more we can help our AAPI mothers and partners. If you enjoyed this episode and our mission, you can help us out in the following ways. Follow our show wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and/or a review, and share our podcast with a friend.
We also encourage you to follow us on Instagram at Healing the Tigress, where we hope to build a community of healing tigresses and give you updates on what's coming. And if you want more bonus episodes, please check out our show notes for how to subscribe to our exclusive content. Or you can also head over to our Buzzsprout page at healingthetigress.buzzsprout.com. We're not for profit. We are here to help our community, but any support you give us is so deeply appreciated. Above all, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here.
Healing the Tigress is produced and edited by Peggy and Jasmine.
Music for this show is remixed by Dr. Tony Huynh of Tony Mixes.
Our intro music is a cover of You and Me by Z Avi, played by our co-host Peggy.
Our outro music is a cover of Green Island Serenade, played by Jasmine's sister.
Cover art design is by Dr. Angela Chung.